Welcome to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University Distance Program. Today we are going to cover yet another chapter on museology titled Museum Collection and Management. We have seen different types of museums, we have seen the origin, we have heard about how they have developed over the years, we have seen the significance of museums in society. Today we are going to understand how the museum officers and staff need to take care of this collection. What does the term museum collection refer to? Museum collection is easily understood. It is the collection of objects of antiquities which are in the store of the museum, which are in the custody of the museum. So, it is referred to as museum collection. This may be art objects, it may be cultural material, it may be anything which is historical, rare and fragile. Managing this collection is also called collection management. So, how do you manage these artifacts? What is the role that the curators, the technical officers of a museum play in keeping these objects carefully, conserving them, preserving them for you? Or how do we use these objects to educate the public? What are the different services that we adopt? Every museum needs to take care of their collection through appropriately qualified technical officers vis-a-vis the collection. What do I mean vis-a-vis the collection? Suppose we have a person who is an expert on paper objects, manuscripts, miniature paintings on paper, anything in paper, and we ask a person who has done his studies in metal to look after paper. Can that person look after? Can he understand the needs of this paper antiquities? Media, this media, if he has to understand, he needs to have a base. So, vis-a-vis the collection, if you have proper officers to look after the collection or the officers who are kept in charge of these collections, it becomes easy to conserve and preserve these objects. Generally, in a museum, the curators who are on the forefront work with the conservators and scientists who are in the background in their laboratories. So, when any problem is diagnosed, it is the person in the gallery. When they are in display, the gallery in charges have to make rounds of the gallery every day. They have to watch objects. They have to see that objects are in perfect condition or good condition, because the moment an object is created, the next day onwards the deterioration starts. Deterioration either due to climatic conditions, either due to manhandling or either due to other inbuilt character of the object itself. Now, so having staff to look after objects is most important, and having staff who are sincere in their duties, who can observe, is also very important. Now, when we talk of museum collection management, what does it entail? What are the different points? It means collection, the museum collects, the museum documents, it records, it conserves and preserves, and then we have a storage and security, storing these objects properly and including security. And then what happens in the objects? We have to research, continue our research on these objects, because we need to communicate to the visitor about these objects. So, studying these objects is a very important duty of the museum. All museums generally have a library, attached library pertaining to their collection or more. For example, the Salarjung Museum is a national institution. What do you mean by a national institution? An institution which is governed by an act of parliament. Salarjung Museum is governed by an act of parliament of 1961, and it is a national institution, and it is not just the museum itself which is a national institution. It is a salarging museum and library. Though the title plates always say salarging museum, they miss out the library part. Even the library is a national institution. It has a very big collection of almost 9,000 manuscripts, engravings, editions in all languages. So, the richness of the library, what does it do? It helps us to understand the objects and even outside. Now, after research, what happens? This research is to know about the objects, it is for publication, it is to educate the visitor, and education, museums have to really upgrade their skills for educating the visitors. Education plays a very important, as I already told you, museums are lifelong centers of education. And next what? We have done our research, we are ready to tell the people about it, but how do we tell the people about it? How does an object tell its story? This is through proper display and communication. The communication systems have now changed from Ajaib Ghar, I told you, to this millennium, third millennium, we have come a long way, and even the communications have changed. So, we always have to keep ourselves updated on developments in technology and try to introduce them in museums. Let us talk about the museum collection first. The museum collections are the result of acquiring. How does a museum acquire? It acquires artifacts, cultural material by individual collectors, families, societies, government bodies, non-government bodies for various reasons like study, preserving culture and traditions for posterity, or a fetish hobby, etc. Museums continue to collect art objects for enriching their collection. I may be running a museum, but I may have gaps in my collection. So, I may acquire artifacts for complementing, supplementing the collection, for enriching the collection, and then to fill in missing periods. That is what I already told you, to fill in missing periods of chronology, media, history, or when rare historical fragile antique pieces are available. So, you can't keep everything in a museum. Maybe you can have a private museum at home or at your place, but not national, state museums, government museums. We are not permitted to keep anything and everything. We need to keep art objects acquired through an art purchase committee. This art purchase committee is constituted by Government of India or the respective state governments, and the members have to be experts on what is being acquired, and then this has to be approved by the board or by the concerned authority. Once this is acquired, the object is listed, then it is documented, and then researched upon, and then decide upon the display and communication systems, and then the gallery is opened. Generally, there are two kinds of galleries in a museum, permanent galleries, and we have the storage, which is now also considered to be a gallery which we have to open to visitors for study if they come. So, there is a bay, research bay in every reserve collection gallery or storage place where they come and see the objects, where they can come and they cannot handle the object. It is done under the supervision of the concerned in charge, and then they can write about it or do research. Of course, all this requires a certain formality which is very visitor friendly and study friendly. Apart from that, what happens? Who decides the collection policy of a museum? Who decides? It is the authority which decides. It has to be ascertained as per their respective very diverse objectives, rationale, needs, funds, aims, vision, mission, etc., and decided by their management authorities, governing bodies or board of trustees. So, suddenly a curator can come across somebody offering a piece of antiquity. So, that antiquity has to be presented to the board, they have to take a stand on that and then decide. So, acquisition is a very important part of the museum collection. Then documenting collection. I already told you how objects are documented. It is a comprehensive inventory of the collection that enables thorough recording of all associated information about the museum object, which is truly essential for all round activities of the museum. Documentation helps in what? It helps in a thorough management of collection for research, publication, education, communication, storage, security and annual audit. If the documentation or the inventory details are not available, suppose museum loses an object, what happens? What are you going to refer to? So, you have to go back to your inventory. Understanding the scope, the strength and limitations of the collection to help supplement the collection. This is another important role that documentation plays. The main fields of documentation are enlisted, enumerated in your textbooks. Please follow it. Now, coming to conservation and preservation of the museum collection, I must tell you that they are all subject to decay, and the sources of decay are man-made or natural, often acting together also. For conservation of objects, historic or artistic, museums generally follow certain standards of procedure and operation, some of which are enumerated in your textbook. Every museum, generally the national museums, have their laboratories. For painting, for metal, they have experts working on them. And in this conservation process, we have two kinds of conservation. One is preventive, where you can prevent the object from further deterioration, and if the object is in a bad shape, then we take up a curative role. We send it to the laboratory for its restoration and further preservation. So, these two play a very important role, these two activities. Coming back to display and communication, which I have been harping about throughout my 3 lessons, I must say that this is the most important aspect. Why is it important? To catch the attention of a visitor. You see, when a visitor comes to a museum, he has to go to the ticket counter, he has to buy his tickets. Sometimes families come with young children, small children, babies also, and then they have to go to the cloak room, they have to deposit their luggage, because luggage is not allowed inside a museum. Then they have to, if they want to take photographs, they have to buy a ticket for that also. So, they have to visit almost 3 places before they enter the museum. They get tired, isn't it? So, if your display is not strong enough, is not interesting enough, the visitor won't be interested. In minimum words, in a minimum way, you have to convey to the visitor about the object. Then what happens? Usually, the display needs to be illuminated properly. Illumination through artificial light. Of course, we are using object friendly lights now, a lot of technology has developed in that area also, but surprisingly the principal enemy of most art objects is light. Illumination levels for art objects are now strictly standardized for different types of sensitive objects. This also I have given in your textbooks, it is enumerated. What is the kind of levels we need for different artifacts. There are various preventive measures to be adopted for protecting museum collection, which are also listed in your textbook. Now, what happens when you see delicate objects? In museums abroad, they display them on desktop showcases and they have a cover. So, a visitor who wants to see the objects, he just has to open the cover, see the objects and then put back the cover. So, this is to avoid extra light, being focused on the objects. There are other galleries which I have visited, which are absolutely, so scientifically advanced that when you enter the gallery, the lights are switched on, and after you leave the gallery, the lights are switched off. So, in this way, light, illumination to objects, extra illumination is also prevented. The way light affects objects is also explained in your textbooks. The other challenges, museums face various challenges are chemical reaction, corrosion of material, fading of dyes, weakening of paper and textiles. because of factors which are not under human control, but you can prevent it. You can prevent it by having additional equipment, air conditioners, dehumidifiers in galleries and storage spaces, exhaust fans, etc., to protect these kinds of objects. The next is biodeterioration, that is growth of fungi. Growth of fungi, there is a major role the curators and other technical staff have to play. They have to visit the galleries, they have to visit the storage to see the condition of the objects, they have to supervise it periodically, monitor the objects properly and give a report. Likewise, climate plays a major challenge, I have already told you, in the protection of art objects and against factors of deterioration. Relative humidity and temperature have a great impact on objects. As I already told you, there are a number of cannons displayed outside, but when in the open galleries, there is no way, you can have a shed over them and to protect it from rain and sunlight, otherwise the material corrodes. Most important, atmospheric pollution. This is a very important factor which is being focused upon. In fact, the Salarjung Museum, we referred it to Neary, who came and did an inspection. Now, this is Salarjung Museum. This is from an aerial view. Can you see the kind of urbanization that has taken place around? Number of small shops, dwellings, small factories. You can understand the kind of pollution which the objects are being subjected to. So, how do we protect these objects? Because we are on the south bank of the river Musi. Even this river Musi contains a lot of water which is not very welcome. Then here it is that we take precautionary measures to protect the museum and its antiquity from environmental pollution. Various methods are adopted, and most important is to create a garden. The Ambedkar University in Hyderabad has a beautiful garden. Similarly, every museum should be surrounded by greenery to absorb the pollutants. Now, storage and security. Is it enough to just display, communicate, educate? No, most important is storage. How do you store? Storage has become a great subject within the museology, which is being paid attention to the world over. Proper storage and security of objects is very important function of collection management. Storage should be planned as per the media of the collection. You have different storage systems for textiles, paper, oil paintings, metal, furniture. Why? You can broadly divide it into organic and inorganic. Climate control methods are adopted both in reserve collection storages and for the galleries, because this climate control, different systems are put in place so that the objects have a continued support by way of temperature, humidity and heat. Now, next, for example, porcelain objects have to be secured with proper padding in storages. Why? If they drop or they tilt, or the fact of they being damaged is always there. So, padding within closed storage. Painting, especially watercolors, need to be stored with acid free based boards and placed flat in flat drawers. You can't make them, can't put them in a position which it does not allow the object to rest. They need to rest. Paper needs to rest. Wooden objects need to be placed on raised platforms away from the walls. Textile, depending on the material, needs to be stored in the drawers or rollers. You must, when you visit a furnishing store, you will see their curtain and other upholstery material rolled up. Even in the museum, carpets and other material, they generally kept on rollers, and the storage facility, the temperature which is maintained has to be monitored continuously. Then we come to museum security. Security in museums, in national museums, has really been upgraded. Now we have the Central Industrial Security Force in some national museums, which looks after the external security, the entry points, the exit points, material coming in, going out, and they have all the necessary infrastructure in place. But is it the responsibility only of the CISF? No. Security of a museum and its object is a joint responsibility of all the technical staff and officers of the museum, along with the security personnel in the museum. The two main aspects are internal security, external security. External involves entry points to museum premises, surroundings also, and internal security, security within the museum, that is the galleries and stores. Art objects in gallery store remain in the charge of the museum technical personnel, and the overall security is under the head of the museum. Museums further have other security devices and equipments in places like the store and galleries, like the CCTV, scanners, metal detectors, metal doors, etc. I was talking about the display systems, so I would just like to give you a few visuals. When the veiled replica was being appreciated by the 7th Nizam, in my previous chapter I showed you the view, it was in a Aina Khana, one of the halls of the Diwan Deodi, which was a residential palace of the Salarjangs. Once the government of India took over, they managed to display these artifacts and open it to public. So, this was how the veiled replica was displayed right in the palace. The palace gave an ambience. We didn't need extra display methods. The palace itself provided the ambience, and she was admired and appreciated by all. I must tell you all some small story that once an officer from the government of India had come to my office in Salarjung Museum, and on some business of some kind of a scholarship, and selections were going on. So, during the break he just visited my office, and he was sitting opposite to me. I just casually asked him, did you see the veiled replica? No, I didn't see. I said, you do one thing, you go down and see the veiled replica and come back, then we will have lunch together. He comes back quickly. Then said, how come you come back so quickly? To which his response, there was a cloth covering it. So, I could not see the veiled replica. What was that cloth? That was a cloth in marble, the veiled Rebecca. She's so famous, people come from all over looking for her to see her displayed in the museum. So, that is how famous she is. There are visitors who have written poems about her and presented it to me. So, that is how she is really enriching the museum by increasing the footfall, because when visitors come to see her, our footfall increases. This is in the Diwan Deodi. Now, I will show you another display system here. When the museum was opened to the public in this new building where you can see all the artifacts, this was a system adopted in the gallery, a modern gallery displaying veiled replica. So, the grandeur of the Diwan Deodi is no longer here. You can see some railings, you can see some labels telling you about the statues, and railing to prevent the visitor from touching the artifact. And now, this is the latest display. So, one particular gallery has gone through 3 different stages of display, and finally, as I told you, here she is able to also attract as usual, whether in the palace or whether previous display, veiled Rebecca always manages to attract attention. Why am I showing you this picture? This is a very old picture of the 20th century. In the Diwan Deodi, there is a clock displayed, number of people, visitors come flocking to see it. Here is the clock where the gong man comes out and hits the gong, and people just wait for the hour. If it is 1 o'clock once, 2 o'clock twice, 3 o'clock thrice, so people just come at the hour to watch it. Now, this is another picture of the same clock, the British clock, and number of visitors. At the end of the beating of the gong, you can hear their happiness. It is a long sigh, and it has to be recorded for posterity. And this is a ticket line in Diwan Deodi. This is a display of textiles, black and white above, color below. Display of carpets. So look to your left, that's in the palace. Look to your right, it is in the modern carpet room. This is a documentation, the High Court registers, the inventory registers, the general accession registers. We have further gone and we have digitized our collection in national museums. Most of us have completed it, and we have a digital inventory too. So, thank you very much. Now, why do I say contact? Because after going through the lessons, you may like to, you may have questions, you may like further clarification. Where do you go to? Because this is an online. So, that is why I have this mail ready for you. Please put your name, your batch and your query, and I shall definitely answer. If you want further, please visit these museums and share your experience with me. I would like to see how successful I have been in making you museum lovers, museum friends, museum visitors regularly. Don't go seeing all the galleries at once. You can take your time, see each gallery, enjoy, educate yourselves during your leisure times. Instead of going to see a movie, you spend so much of money on a movie, but this is so reasonable, the entry. Go see museums around you. It may be a district museum, it may be a site museum, it may be a state museum, or it may be a national museum. Go to galleries also. There are a number of galleries in Hyderabad, all over India, private galleries which showcase different artifacts like paintings, decorative arts, crafts. So, you must visit, enrich yourself and enrich those around you. Heritage awareness is most important. Heritage awareness protects and conserves our heritage for posterity. Unless you are aware about the importance of heritage, we can do nothing about it alone. Just the government and the museums cannot help. All your cooperation is required to spread the word, just not for museums but also for heritage structures. Don't go leaving your names on the heritage structure. When Qutub Shah built the Charminar, he didn't leave his name on it, but you find people going there making love triangles, making hearts and arrows. It's not necessary. Okay? And if anybody is doing it, please stop them. So, conserve our heritage for posterity. Thank you.